Namaste. In the previous class, we looked at some reactions of alcohols and we introduced the reactions of phenols. We looked at specifically electrophilic substitution reactions, and we said OH group is electron releasing in nature. Because it is electron releasing, it is also an ortho para directing group. Therefore, the products that are obtained are ortho and para products. Then we looked at situations where bromination can happen with two different reagents, nitration can happen with two different reagents, and sulfonation as well. Then we looked at one special reaction, Call-base reaction. We stopped with this in the previous class, where a phenol is made to react with sodium hydroxide, which gives us sodium phenate, which on further reaction with carbon dioxide and H plus gives us salicylic acid. In today's class, we'll continue further with the reaction of phenols, starting from one very important reaction called Reimer-Tiemann reaction. Now, this is again an important reaction because it's a name reaction. Name reactions are always very, very important reactions. Now, I want you to focus on the reaction here, understand it, then we'll try to look at which is the other reaction involved in Reimer-Tiemann. Now, in Reimer-Tiemann, the starting compound is a phenol. This is made to react with NaOH and chloroform. This is nothing but chloroform. CHCl3 is chloroform. So what will happen when phenol is made to react with NaOH is, we know this already, H plus from here takes away OH from here to go out as water. What remains here? Na remains. Na gets substituted in place of hydrogen to become ONA. So this is what NaOH does. Then coming to chloroform, CHCl3. What will CHCl3 do? Now, we have seen that the ortho hydrogen here can be removed easily during electrophilic substitution reaction. So what will happen with chloroform is, this hydrogen takes away one of the chlorine atoms to go out as HCl. So let me repeat, the hydrogen at the ortho position takes away one of the chlorine atoms to go out as HCl. Now the moment it goes out as HCl, what remains to get substituted is CHCl2. So CHCl2 gets substituted in place of a hydrogen to form this particular compound. Now you can clearly see here, the hydrogen at the ortho position is substituted by CHCl2. So this is the first step. To this, we add 2 moles of sodium hydroxide. Now, why are we adding 2 moles of sodium hydroxide? Logic is simple. The 2 sodium atoms will take away both the chlorine atoms to go out as NaCl. So 2Na takes away 2Cl to go out as NaCl. Now, in place of both the chlorines, who's going to get substituted now? Yes, 2OH minus gets substituted in place of Cl2 to give us CHOH twice. Now, when you observe this molecule here, this carbon, the carbon which is having H and OH twice, it has more than one OH group, or more than one OH group is attached to the same carbon. Now, we need to understand one thing. This is a generalization. Whenever a carbon has more than one OH group attached to it, it will always result in removal of water. It will always result in dehydration. This is basically to avoid steric hindrance. Two OH groups, if they are next to each other, both are bulky groups. Because they are bulky, it will increase the steric hindrance, thereby reducing the stability. In order to increase the stability internally, what will happen is, from both the OH groups, one molecule of water is removed. So this water is removed from these two OH groups. The moment a water molecule is removed, CHOH twice will become CHO. So CHOH twice has become an aldehyde group now. Now, what is the last step? Last step is I need to convert ONA back to OH. We have seen how we can accomplish this by just adding an acid. The moment I add an acid, Na will be taken out as Na plus. If I have any Cl minus in the solution, it will go out as NaCl, and H plus will get substituted in place of Na to become OH, giving us salicylaldehyde. In the previous reaction, we came across the preparation of salicylic acid. Here we are getting salicylaldehyde because CHO is the functionality, and to that I have OH as a substituent. Hence, I can also call it as 1-hydroxy benzaldehyde, clear, or 2-hydroxy benzaldehyde because the OH will be attached to the second position. So this will be 2. Clear? So this is Reimer-Tiemann reaction. Let me quickly go through this reaction once again so that you understand better. The starting compound is phenol. Phenol is made to react with NaOH. Now what happens when it reacts with NaOH? The H plus takes away OH minus to go out as water, and Na gets substituted. This is nothing but an acid-base reaction. So OH gets converted to ONA. Then coming to the use of chloroform. Now the orthohydrogen takes away one of the chlorines of chloroform to go out as HCl. Thereby, CHCl2 gets substituted in place of the hydrogen here as shown. What happens in the next step? In the next step, this molecule is made to react with 2 moles of NaOH. Why 2 moles of NaOH? Because the 2 sodium atoms will take away 2 chlorine atoms to go out as 2 NaCl. And what remains? I have 2 OH groups. They get substituted in place of the Cl to become CHOH twice. In the next step, we just said if any carbon has more than one OH group attached to it, there is always removal of water. So there is removal of water, CHOH twice becomes CHO. In the last step, I need to get back my OH. So for that, I just need to add an acid. The moment I add an acid, Na plus goes out, and in place of Na plus, H plus comes in to give us a molecule which has 2 functional groups, OH and CHO. And we will consider CHO as the primary functional group because in the priority order of functional groups, CHO comes first and only after that comes OH. So OH will be a substituent, CHO will be the primary functional group. This compound is called as salicylaldehyde or 2-hydroxy benzaldehyde. I will leave this slide open for you for a couple of minutes so that you can observe and understand. I hope you have understood the reaction here. This looks big. The reaction sequence looks big, but actually speaking, it's quite easy because you only have 2 major reagents that are involved. So NaOH is involved, and that is involved twice. And then I have chloroform. Clear? If you understand what happens at each step, you can actually write this reaction very easily on your own. Now let's see if you have actually understood this. I'll give you a homework. Now listen to the homework carefully. The homework is, I want you to write Reimer-Tiemann reaction starting from phenol, NaOH, and carbon tetrachloride. Yes, you heard me right. Instead of chloroform, I want you to start with carbon tetrachloride. Now, who's carbon tetrachloride? Yes, CCl4. CCl4 is carbon tetrachloride. So instead of chloroform, I want you to take carbon tetrachloride and complete this reaction. Find out what is your final product. So this is the first homework for today. write Reimer-Tiemann reaction using carbon tetrachloride. Now, if I can just visualize the reaction for you, very simple. Phenol with NaOH with CCl4. So like the previous case, H plus will take away one of the Cl's to go out as HCl. So what will remain here of carbon tetrachloride? Yes, CCl3 will remain. That CCl3 will get substituted in place of hydrogen here. CCl3 is what I'll have here. In the previous case, we took 2 moles of NaOH. Why? Because there were 2 chlorine atoms to be removed. Now, how many chlorines will be there? Yes, 3 chlorines will be there. So therefore, I need to use 3 moles of NaOH. The moment I use 3 moles of NaOH, 3 sodium atoms will take away the 3 chlorine atoms to go out as 3 NaCl, giving us what? OH thrice will get substituted, COH thrice. Now, once again, there are more than one OH groups attached to carbon, so there is removal of water. When there is removal of water, you will get another functional group. I will not mention which functional group is that. Okay, I want you to do it and then discover for yourself. Another functional group. Finally, H plus will remove Na plus, H gets substituted to give you another polyfunctional compound, which is something that we have already come across in this chapter. So that's a hint for you. I hope by now a few of you have got the answer already. But for the others, no need to worry. The moment you write down, practice it, you will be in a position to understand what is that other compound. Got that? Yeah, wonderful. So very important, Reimer-Tiemann reaction has been asked a lot of times. In fact, Kolbe's and Reimer, one of these two have been asked a lot of times in your exams, both in PU as well as competitive. So remember to focus on this reaction. Oh, I by mistake, I showed the homework reaction also for you. Thankfully, I hope not many saw that. Take that as homework. The next reaction, this is also one more important reaction. This has been asked a lot of times as well. Important, the star looks starry. Phenol reaction with zinc dust. I want you to observe what's happening in the reaction. Phenol is getting converted to benzene. Now, what is happening here? The first thing people tell me when they observe this reaction is, sir, OH is going out. How many of you honestly tell me thought the same thing, that from phenol to this OH has gone out? Yeah, not your mistake. It's just that you need to observe keenly. Now, benzene is nothing but C6H6, which means this carbon has a hydrogen attached to it, even though it is not shown here. So now tell me, what is actually happened? Yes, so what's actually happened is oxygen is removed. Yeah, oxygen is removed by zinc, which is used in the form of a dust as zinc oxide, and H gets substituted in place of oxygen to give us benzene. So this is the reaction of phenol with zinc dust. I've seen this question a lot of times in competitive, especially. Of course, true for PU as well. All right. The next question, the next reaction is oxidation reaction. Now we have already seen what oxidation is. Oxidation is either defined as addition of oxygen or removal of hydrogen or loss of electrons. Now, in the case of alcohols and phenols, or alcohols especially, we have looked at the two definitions, which is addition of oxygen and removal of hydrogen. Now, we also looked at how different alcohols behave, how primary alcohols behave, how secondary alcohols behave, how tertiary alcohols behave. So can you just recollect that? When a primary alcohol is made to undergo oxidation, what do I get? Yes, aldehyde, which on further oxidation gives me what? Yes, carboxylic acid having the same number of carbon atoms. If I take a secondary alcohol, what does it give me upon oxidation? Yes, it gives me a ketone, which on further oxidation will give, yes, a mixture of carboxylic acids having less number of carbon atoms than the starting alcohol. If a tertiary alcohol is made to undergo oxidation, yes, they will undergo dehydration to form an alkene. Good. Some of you are really doing the homework, you're revising it so that you keep in your memory. Others who have already forgotten whatever we discussed in the previous class, it's important and high time that you understand organic chemistry is highly volatile. You need to revise every concept that was taught on a single day. Make it a point to go back home, revise practice. That's what is going to make you better. All right, let's come to the oxidation of phenols. Now, I want you to apply the same logic that you applied for primary and secondary. Now, when you look at this phenol here, the OH group is attached to a carbon, which is in turn attached to how many more carbon atoms? Yes, it is in turn attached to 1, 2. It is in turn attached to 2 more carbon atoms. So therefore, what does it resemble? Which alcohol does it resemble? Yes, it resembles a secondary alcohol. Although I cannot call it as a secondary alcohol because it is phenol. But still, for our understanding right now, it looks like what? It looks like a secondary alcohol. And what did we say secondary alcohols give upon oxidation? They give a ketone, which means this group should become double bond O. Hydrogen should be removed and I should get a double bond here. Now, okay, assume I get a double bond here. What is the problem? Very good. The problem is very simple. Sir, this carbon has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bonds around it, which is not possible, which means this bond should go out. If this bond goes out, who gets affected? Yes, sir, this carbon gets affected. So, what is the solution for that? The solution lies in the product that we get. When we observe the product, of course, yes, this position is oxidized to form C double bond O. It is not the only position that gets oxidized. The para position gets oxidized too. This position also gets oxidized to become a double bond O, and the two double bonds get shifted in parallel like this. Got that? So you will not only have one ketonic group, you will have two ketonic groups attached to benzene. This is what is the product of oxidation of phenol, for which I can use potassium dichromate or sodium dichromate in an acid which are strong oxidizing agents. Why do I need a strong oxidizing agent? Yes, a strong oxidizing agent will do both the tasks, addition of oxygen as well as removal of hydrogen. Now, is there addition of oxygen happened? Yes, because at the para position, I have an oxygen that's added. So there is addition of oxygen. Is there removal of hydrogen? Yes, there are, because there is one hydrogen removed from here and there was one more hydrogen here which was removed. So both have happened, indicating that this is strong oxidation, giving us benzoquinone. Yeah, so this is the product of oxidation of phenol. Clear? This leaves us with the chemical properties of ethers, the last set of compounds in this chapter. There are two reactions that are basically seen in ethers. Reactions involving cleavage of the CO bond. Now we know the general formula of an ether, R O R dash. which means we are talking about cleavage of any one of these bonds, either this or this. So reactions involving cleavage of CO bond, and the second reaction is electrophilic substitution. And electrophilic substitution is seen in what kind of ethers? Yes, aromatic ethers, because electrophilic substitution is a characteristic reaction of aromatic compounds. All right, let's look at the first type, reactions involving cleavage of CO bond. One thing is for sure, you need to understand that ethers are least reactive, or in other words, they are very stable when you compare it with alcohols or phenols. They will only react, or the cleavage happens only under drastic conditions. You need to have a higher temperature for this reaction to happen, or in certain cases you need to have a higher pressure, or in some cases you need a catalyst as well. So they will not react under normal conditions because they are least reactive. They'll only undergo reaction under drastic conditions. So the first reaction is reaction with HX, which is nothing but a hydrogen halide or halogen acid. If both R groups are the same, remember we said if both R groups are the same, such an ether is a symmetrical ether or a simple ether. Both R groups are different, it's a mixed ether or an unsymmetrical ether. Clear? If I have two different R groups, let's see what happens. Or if I have the same R group or different R group, see what happens. Let's look at the reaction. So I have an ROR reacting with HX. If it is taken in excess at 373 Kelvin, what happens is the bond between carbon and oxygen is cleaved. This becomes R plus, this becomes OR minus. Now, same way, HX cleaves, this becomes H plus, this becomes X minus. So who will attack whom naturally? Yes, X will attack this R, which is having the positive charge. H will attack this group, which is negatively charged. If that attack happens, what do I get? Yes, this will become Rx, which is shown here. This will become ROH, which is shown here. If both the R groups are the same, then what do I get? I get an alcohol and the alkyl halide which have the same R group. Clear? And if I've taken HX in excess, the alcohol will not remain like that. It will in fact react with one more mole of HX to become what? To become RX. This was one of the methods of preparation of alkyl halides and one of the properties of alcohols. Remember, reaction of alcohol with hydrogen halide. Clear? Where OH is taken away by H as water and X gets substituted in place of OH to become RX. So if I take HX in excess, I'm actually getting 2 moles of Rx. If what? If both the R groups are the same. You got that? If both the R groups are the same and you take excess of HX, the final products that you get will be 2 moles of Rx, which are the same. Clear? Which have the same R group. And coming to the unsymmetrical ether, R and R dash, if both the R groups are different, where will this cleavage happen? This is a very important question, very important logic. If I have R O R dash, this is also a CO bond, this is also a CO bond. Clear? Now which bond will be cleaved is the question. The answer lies in this statement. The smaller R group becomes the halide. So what is it telling me? If I have a mixed ether, which is ROR dash, where both the R groups are different, the smaller R group will become the halide. Now, for the smaller R group to become the halide, the bond should break between the smaller R group and the oxygen. Clear? That's what we understood here. Now, let's come to this example here. RO R dash. Assume that R is the smaller R group. So naturally the bond should break here. If the bond breaks here, R will become R plus. This will become OR dash minus. Got that? Now how is HX breaking? H plus X minus. So who will attack R plus? Naturally X minus will attack R plus. If X minus attacks R plus, what do I get? I get RX. So therefore, H plus will attack whom? H plus will attack OR minus, giving you what? R dash OH. So the smaller group will become the alkyl halide and the bigger group will become the alcohol. Clear? Very important. I want you to understand this concept. Keep this in mind. In an unsymmetrical ether, when there is cleavage during the reaction with HX, the bond will always be cleaved towards the smaller R group, thereby giving an alkyl halide which has the smaller R group. Got that? Yeah. If both R groups are different, clear? If both R groups are different, we have already seen what happens. I have two examples to show for you. This is an aromatic ether where one of the R groups is an aryl group and I have R. Now, who's the smaller R group here? Yes, this is the smaller R group. So the bond cleaves here. If the bond cleaves here, what do I get? R will take away X to become RX and H gets substituted in place of R to give us phenol. Got that? Yeah. Then coming to one more example. Now this example is important. I want you to focus on this example. Is this a simple ether or a mixed ether? Yes, super. This is a mixed ether, which means both the R groups are different. Now, what did we just say before? If both the R groups are different, where will the bond cleave? Where should the bond cleave? Yes, the bond should cleave between the smaller R group and oxygen. And which R group will form the halide? Yes, the smaller R group will form the halide. Yes, clearly understood all that? Wonderful. Now, with that understanding, try to look at what's happening in this reaction. Observe this reaction. Look at the products. Is there anything unusual here? Yes. So what's unusual is, as per what we just said so far, the bond should have cleaved here. If the bond cleaved here, the smaller R group, which is CH3, should have taken away the halide to form CH3I. But that's not what is obtained. What's obtained? The smaller R group is actually becoming an alcohol. The bigger R group is becoming the halide, which means where is the bond breaking? The bond is breaking here. This is against what we just said, right? Yeah. Why do you think the reason might be? All right. So remember, if one of the R groups is tertiary, I want you to remember this, whatever I'm saying right now. If one of the R groups is tertiary, the bond will always be cleaved towards the tertiary group. Let me repeat. If one of the R groups in an ether is tertiary, then irrespective of whether it is small or big, the bond will always be cleaved at the tertiary. Why is it so? Answer lies in the stability of carbocations. Now, when you look at the cleavage here, after this cleavage, what is the carbocation you get? Yes, you get a tertiary carbocation. Now, tertiary carbocation is the most stable carbocation. This is something that we studied last year and we studied in the previous chapter as well. The order of stability of carbocations follows tertiary, more stable than secondary, more stable than primary. So therefore, this portion will become the halide and this portion will become the alcohol. Clear? Got that? So point is very simple. Let me just brush this for you. Ethers, when they react with HX, result in the formation of two products. One is an alkyl halide, another one is an alcohol. Now, who forms the alkyl halide, who forms the alcohol is determined by the nature of the R groups. If both the R groups are the same, then we need not worry because we get the same product with the same R group. Whereas if both the R groups are different, then the smaller R group will become the halide, the bigger R group will become the alcohol. If it is aromatic, then the other R group, the benzene, the bond will not be cleaved between benzene and oxygen. The bond will always be cleaved between the other R group and oxygen. The other R group will become the halide. Benzene will always become phenol. If one of the R groups is tertiary, irrespective of whether it is big or small, the bond will always be broken at the tertiary end. The tertiary group, alkyl group, will become the halide, and the other R group, whether it is big or small, will become the alcohol. Clear? I hope you have understood this so far. Yes, wonderful. That leaves us with the last reaction that we need to understand in this chapter, which is electrophilic substitution reaction. Now, just like in the previous case, whenever we are talking about electrophilic substitution, we need to talk about what kind of group is the functional group, whether it is an electron releasing group or whether it is an electron withdrawing group. Now, why do I need to know that? You need to know that because if it is electron releasing in nature, it will be ortho-para directing. If it is electron withdrawing in nature, it will be meta directing. So that will indicate where the electrophile gets substituted, whether it gets substituted at the ortho-para positions or whether it gets substituted at the meta position. Clear? Now let's look at what happens in the case of an ether. OR group is electron releasing in nature. Now, why is it electron releasing in nature? Because we generalize this. Any group, if the atom that is attached to benzene, or in this case it is oxygen, if it has a lone pair, here oxygen has a lone pair, it will always be electron releasing in nature or an ortho para directing group. Why? Due to the presence of lone pair. So the incoming electrophile gets substituted where? It gets substituted at either ortho or para positions. Who's the major product between ortho and para? Yes, the para product will be major and ortho product will be minor. We spoke about this as well because of steric hindrance. So this is the general reaction. If you understand the general reaction, the specific ones become very easy. So electrophile is E plus. This is an ether. Substitution can either happen at the ortho or the para positions, giving us para and ortho product, out of which the para product is the major product, ortho product is the minor product. Clear? Yeah, let's come to the specific case. Friedel-Crafts reaction. Friedel-Crafts reaction is a reaction where the reagent that is used is anhydrous aluminum chloride, or the catalyst is anhydrous aluminum chloride. The first example is an example for alkylation because I'm taking an alkyl halide. Now we said this is nothing but ortho-para directing, so the product obtained will be ortho and para. So what happens? hydrogen at either ortho or para will be removed with Cl. So if I have hydrogen here, it will be removed with Cl to go out as HCl. In place of that hydrogen, who gets substituted? CH3 gets substituted, which is what is seen here. This is orthomethoxytoluene or 2-methoxytoluene. If the hydrogen at para is replaced, we get 4-methoxytoluene. 4-methoxytoluene is nothing but the major product, and this will be the minor product. So this is alkylation. What is the second one? Second one is acylation. Friedel-Crafts acylation. For alkylation, you took an alkyl halide. For acylation, you need to take an acyl halide. So what is the halide we are taking? CH3COCl is what we are taking. Now, naturally, what happens? Either at ortho or para, hydrogen is removed. Hydrogen takes away Cl to go out as HCl. So who gets substituted? CH3CO gets substituted. So COCH3, the bond is between C of the CO and not the C of CH3. Clear? It can either happen at ortho or it can happen at para. So 2-methoxyacetophenone. Clear? So this will become my substituent, 2-methoxyacetophenone. This group is acetophenone. Clear? Or 4-methoxyacetophenone. Out of these two, the major product will be the para product. The minor product will be the ortho product. Clear? Simple? Done? Wonderful. Let's look at the next reactions in electrophilic. Bromination and nitration. Now, unlike the case of phenols, here we do not have two different ways in which we can carry out bromination or nitration. Remember, in the case with phenol, we did bromination under two conditions. Which were the two conditions? Yes, reaction of phenol with bromine water, reaction of phenol with bromine and CS2. Now, both of them gave us different products, which is entirely based on the concentration of the electrophile. Same thing happened with nitration as well, where you can either carry it out with dilute nitric acid or concentrated nitric acid. Here, we just follow the normal electrophilic substitution, where we have either ortho product or the para product. So when anisole, this is anisole, is made to react with bromine and CS2, clear? Bromination, you get orthobromoanisole or parabromoanisole. Same way, if you take anisole and react it with nitrating mixture, you get orthonitroanisole, paranitroanisole. Pretty straightforward. Now, one thing you need to understand, you have come across these reactions right from your first year. So it is definitely bound to be there in your memory. All you need to understand is the nature of this group. Just understand, in every chapter, you will come across electrophilic substitution. All you need to know is what is the nature of that group, whether it is electron releasing or whether it is electron withdrawing. In the previous chapter, aryl halides, we again looked at electrophilic substitution, correct? There, Cl is electron releasing because it has a lone pair. Because it is electron releasing, yes, ortho para product. Clear? In this chapter, we looked at OH and OR. Again, both of them are electron releasing. In the next chapter, aldehydes, ketones, carboxylic acids, amines, next set of chapters, we'll again come across these groups. The reaction conditions remain the same. It's just that the nature of the products, who will be the product, is dependent on the nature of that functional group, whether it is ortho-para-directing or whether it is meta-directing. Other than that, you don't need to worry much about the reaction conditions because they will be exactly the same like what you studied in your first year. Clear? All right, so before I go to the last part, I want to give you one more homework here. Yeah. So the I gave you the first homework already, which was Reimer Timon. The second homework is I want you to take an ether methyl propyl ether. So what is the ether? Methyl propyl ether. I want you to take methyl propyl ether and carry out reaction with HX. Take methyl propyl ether, carry out the reaction with HX. I'll give you one more. I want you to start with tertiary butyl propyl ether. I want you to start with tertiary butyl propyl ether. React it with HX. Okay, so two reactions you need to do here. This is just to find out whether you have understood the concept or not. First one is methyl propyl ether. Second one is tertiary butyl propyl ether. I want you to find out where will the bond be cleaved and who becomes the alcohol and who becomes the halide. Clear? Super. With this, we come to the last part of this chapter where we answer why do we need to study these compounds? Why study these at all? I know when I was studying organic chemistry, when I was in school or in college, I used to hate it because there are reactions everywhere. I'm a sort of a person who does not like to by heart. I'm a sort of a person who likes to understand and then see logic and then apply. I am not a person who will just sit and by heart mug up all these reactions. So I used to hate this. But slowly I realized there's a fun way of learning organic chemistry as well. And that's one of the reasons why I'm teaching organic chemistry here for you. But on the other side, we need to understand why do we need organic compounds. Organic compounds are very essential because they are used extensively by man on a day-to-day basis. So that's what we're going to discuss here. We will talk about the uses. Now this is something that you've already come across in school, so I'll just brush through. Methanol. Methanol is synthesized or manufactured by this reaction, by this process. Water gas, which is a mixture of carbon monoxide and hydrogen, is made to pass through this catalyst, zinc chromic oxide catalyst, to give methanol. So this is the reaction that is employed in the manufacture of methanol. Now, why is methanol used? It is used to prepare denatured alcohol. Now, what is denatured alcohol? 5% of methanol is added to rectified spirit. Now, this is again something that you came across in school. What is rectified spirit? Rectified spirit is nothing but 95% of absolute alcohol and 5% of water. So 100% alcohol is absolute alcohol. 95% of alcohol and 5% of water is called as rectified spirit. To rectified spirit, 5% of methanol is added. That alcohol is called as denatured alcohol. Now, why is it used? Why is it done? It is done in order to make it unfit for drinking. Now, let's look at the second use here. Only then we'll understand the first use. Methanol is used in solvents, paints, and varnishes. Clear, is used as a solvent. Same thing as ethanol as well. Ethanol is used as a very good solvent in industries. Alcohol is a very good solvent used in industries. Imagine if there are industries where alcohol is used in large quantities, what will the workers do? Instead of working on using alcohol as a solvent, They will be working on using alcohol for their consumption. This will reduce productivity, reduce the solvent that is used, and result in huge losses for the industry. So to prevent people from drinking that alcohol, what they do, they prepare denatured alcohol where they add 5% of methanol. Why is adding methanol dangerous? Because methanol is poisonous. Even traces of methanol in alcohol will immediately result in blindness. It will result in failure of vital organs, and if the concentration is too high, it will result in death. Now, this is the single most cause for death in villages where people drink illicit liquor. Why people die because of drinking illicit liquor is very simple. Because if during fermentation, if some of it remains as methanol, if all of them get converted to ethanol, then it's fine, it's fit for drinking. But if some of it, small portion, if it is methanol, then it will result in poisoning. Hence, to prevent people from drinking alcohol which is used as a solvent there in industries, methanol, traces of methanol is added. Now, along with that, pyridine is also added. Pyridine, the moment it is added, it gives a very bad smell. So even if people and whether will we know whether methanol is added or not? No, because both are colorless. Both methanol and ethanol are colorless. So people might still feel, let me drink. So to that, pyridine is added so that it gives a very bad smell. So even if somebody takes the courage to go and drink that alcohol, just because of the smell, he does not want to do it. Clear? So anybody here, do not try to drink the alcohol that is there in your lab, because the moment you do it, your photo will be there in the next day's newspaper, because it is always poisoned with methanol. And this is how ethanol is prepared. This story is something that you already know. Invertase, zymase, the two enzymes which are used. A disaccharide gives two monosaccharide units, glucose and fructose. The monosaccharide in the presence of invertase, the monosaccharide in the presence of zymase becomes ethanol. Now, this story is something that you already know. I will not go deeper into this. Phenol, lot of derivatives of phenols are used as drugs. Clear? One such thing is aspirin, which we already came across when we did the reactions. Ethers, dimethyl ether is used as a refrigerant. Now, who is a refrigerant? Refrigerant is something that is used in conditions where you need to reduce the temperature to sub-zero conditions, to use as a refrigerant and also a solvent at low temperature. Diethyl ether is used as an anesthesia in surgery. So dimethyl ether is used as a refrigerant. Diethyl ether is used as an anesthesia in surgery. Clear? So far in this chapter, what did we cover as a part of the story? So the story started off with what they are, what are the different types, what are the various ways in which we can classify. Then we looked at how we looked at how to name them, both according to common system as well as IUPAC system. Then we looked at how to prepare alcohols, phenols, and ethers using different methods. And then we looked at questioning why. Why do we need to study? We need to study because of the reactions and the products that they give. We looked at physical properties, chemical properties of alcohols, phenols, and ethers in detail, involving all the different types, certain name reactions, certain mechanisms, and also we also looked at how to remember those mechanisms as well. Post that, finally, we answered the question why in terms of the uses. So I hope this entire chapter is something that's understood to you right now. If no, you can definitely reach out to me through my email address. My email address is krish.yours@gmail.com. All small letters. At any stage you come across any doubts, I'll be very happy to help you out with those doubts. It was a pleasure being with you, explaining this chapter: alcohols, phenols, and ethers. Remember, organic chemistry is highly volatile. You need to go back and practice. The more practice, the better you become. So, until the next chapter, this is Karthik Krishnan B signing off. Thank you. Namaste.